All right, we'll move on to item letter B, fee schedule discussion. You guys all know what the situation is with this. Let me open the packet here. Public Service Committee met on October 9th, 2023 to review the fee schedule. Attached are the minutes from the meeting. Public Service Committee recommends that council retain the update fee schedule with a few suggestions on special events as noted in the minutes attached. These suggestions seem like they're for saving money for the city, not for the people that are having the event. Is that right? Councilman Beer.
On the fee schedule, where the majority of the costs are with the after hours, weekend hours, holiday hours of having DPS staff put up the barriers and put down the barriers.
Okay, so that's for the labor costs.
For the labor costs, right. We could probably get Jason up here just to address this. So and our hands are kind of tied from the standpoint that the city legally cannot give away free services. So kind of what the public service was, the main point of it was to have volunteers, actually have the city personnel set the barriers out the day before, whatever, the normal working hours, and then pick them up on the Monday. But for the actual event, to have volunteers go and actually place the barriers up where they need to be to block the streets that are in question. And in fact, for this light-up parade, I was already gonna volunteer to be one of those volunteers to set those brigades up, or barricades up. And actually, I think maybe a lot of the service organizations can get involved. And if we can do that, I can't remember what, Jason, you were saying, but as far as the labor costs could be reduced quite substantially from the city standpoint, right?
Correct. So there is the option of any vendor picking up the traffic code from our office, setting it out under our guidelines of the maps we make, and then maintaining them, erecting them, putting them down, and then bring them in or bring them back.
Have we didn't used to charge labor, is that correct?
That's correct.
So why didn't we look at changing the fee schedule if we're gonna charge for the labor? And I'm not sold on this giving away services free argument. Ken owns a business in Hillsdale. That business pays taxes, that funds the operations of the city. So we're not giving away our services. Our services are funded by the taxpayers, and these are services that we offer them. That's my interpretation of it. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't understand how this is something we've done in the past, and I've never heard this giving away services free argument, because we send firefighters to people's house and don't charge them if they live in the city, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't understand how this is.
So that's different. That is a service, that is a public service as defined by the general definition that's been given by the Michigan Supreme Court with respect to the things that government ordinarily does. Just because somebody's a taxpayer doesn't factor into it at all. There is a long line of cases from the Michigan Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals that says that is a violation of the Michigan Constitution. You cannot give away anything, your money, use of your property, the services of your people, if you're a governmental entity under the Constitution of the state of Michigan, without receiving full value in return, full consideration for it. You are precluded from doing that. And it doesn't matter whether you're giving it to a private enterprise or another public entity. So you couldn't give services away to the county without getting full value in return. You can give away property to the county without getting full value in return. That includes leasing property to them, letting them use your barricades and such, and in this case, the labor of your personnel, which the city is paying for. So yeah, I understand your concern, but Michigan Supreme Court for a long time has said that's a violation of two different provisions of the Michigan Constitution, and that is clear law, absolutely right down the line. So.
Okay, but if we're charging, the whole point of increasing this fee schedule was to recoup our costs.
Yeah.
But if we're charging, and this isn't for you, this is for Jason, and the Public Service Committee. But if we're charging costs for the laborers, that's recouping the costs right there. So why are we sticking with this ridiculously cost prohibitive increases in the fee schedule?
The fee schedule, unfortunately, is a fraction of the total cost, but the fee schedule is also calculated in a way based on labor costs, from what I understand. So it has to go through legal, it has to go through the police chief, and this is all billable hours. Yeah, we looked into potential reductions in the fee schedule based on the city sponsoring the event and the event giving us services in return, and we could get about a 50% reduction there, but we're talking about $100 in savings when the labor is going to be $2,000 to $3,000. So, yeah, I think what we need to do is just ensure that all of these organizations know the bill that's coming for them, and we can help them prepare the labor. We estimated that the city would just have to drop off and pick up the barricades. They would do that 9 to 5 on a Friday, so they're not getting charged $50 an hour plus for labor costs. And then volunteers would come and pick up and set down, and hopefully, I think we were hoping $200 would be the labor cost for the whole event, just for dropping them off and picking them up. So, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, the fee schedule unfortunately was also calculated on a similar basis, and we even realized that there were certain things that we weren't in that calculation, but we're just gonna set those aside for now.
So, okay, the fee is for what? The fee schedule is for what labor services is the fee schedule for? Is it for the police?
So the fee schedule that we have in front is for the right-of-way permit. What's all included in the right-of-way permit is the cost of going through multiple departments, DPS, fire, or police, fire, for user agreement, legal, all that stuff are factored in there, including the rental cost of the traffic control to replace it in X amount of years. So that's what cost as part of the fee. So on top of that too is we're charging the labor on the separate side of it. So after the event, we charge a true labor cost, and that's what we're invoicing for.
So you have the fee, but the labor cost, which you're talking about the labor cost now, has to do with the barricades.
Correct. Physically
But that's not, so that fee is not, the fee isn't for that, that is in addition to the fee.
Correct.
And so, I guess what I'm querying is that, could we charge a different fee for entities, like, if it's a community event, could we then charge a different fee? I think we talked about this
So my understanding is the labor we'd have to charge out 100%. The permit fee we could change and move it. That is just a small cost percentage of the whole.
Well, I can address that to a degree. Okay? There are specific carve-outs that the legislature has created for things that you can spend money on. They say it's okay. We're basically saying this is a public purpose that you can spend the cash. And one of them that's statutorily provided for is the statutory section is MCL 123.881, and it says the common council of any city or the corporate authorities of any village in this state shall have the power to levy a special tax not to exceed in any 1 year 4 mills on the dollar of the assessed valuation of all taxable property within the said city or village to be used for advertising, exploiting and making known the industrial, commercial, educational, or recreational advantages of the said city or village, and to establish recreational and educational projects for the purposes of encouraging immigration to and increasing the trade, business, and industries of the said city or village, provided, however, that such tax levy shall not exceed $50,000 in any 1 year. And that's my preface too, so they say you can do that, right? What Councilman is referring to is the conversation that we had regarding what the city of Grand Rapids does. What they do is they make a designation with their fee schedule between commercial events and community events. And community events are things that, you're not charging an admission fee, people can come to freely, the citizens in the community can come to it, could be parades, could be holiday celebrations, could be block parties, that kind of thing, right? Where you're not doing it for some commercial purpose, and they give a 75% discount on their fee schedule for that. As part of that, you have to agree that you're going to treat the city as a sponsor of the event. And if there are any benefits associated with it, the city has to get the benefits that are commensurate with whatever the dollar value of the discount you received is. And I think, from what I've been able to piece together, that they're attempting to use that statute that I just referenced as their mechanism for being able to have that reduction for what they've defined as community events. Because from that point, they're viewing it as, it's something that we're doing to help, and you've got to use the city of Grand Rapids logo on your stuff to show they're a sponsor. You've got to indicate they're one of the sponsors of the event, and they're a partner with you in putting this event on. And by doing that, I think they're trying to avail themselves of that statutory section, right? We're doing this because we're showing what a great community we are. It gets the word out, just like another sponsor and business community might sponsor, get their name on something for advertising purposes, right? Same thing for the city of Grand Rapids. So yeah, that is a mechanism I think legally you could probably use as a justification for giving a reduced fee to certain types of events that would fit within what you would consider to be something that is open to the general public.
And would we have to do anything with a city ordinance or something to do that, or we could just decide to do that?
Well, you would want to adopt a policy that does that, which is kind of what the fee schedule is, right? And if you look at what they have, they've got a listing even of a event guide that tells you, here's what we define roughly, some guidelines for what's considered a commercial event as opposed to a community event. You don't want to spell that all out, and you want to have a policy that says all that, right? You wouldn't need the discretion, other than the discretion of the council, right, to make determinations to which things are subject to that.
So if we wanted to replicate what Grand Rapids is doing, how mechanically would we do that?
If I may, real quick. So we did some, public service committee, we did some work on Grand Rapids, actually contacted them directly. The 75% is only for the site of entities that you get at 7% reduced rate. The fee schedule is off of the commercial and residential, but it's at 50% is by department. So in Grand Rapids, you pay the police to be out there at sergeant wages, you pay everyone that's there from the city, from the top up to the top down, you pay for it. So a permit that was the kind of the equivalent of the light up parade was $5,400 up there before the reduced rate, and they got it for $2,800. But up there again, they're paying from the top down. 75% reduction, like I said, just for site amenities. So a park, a street would be a site amenity, stuff like that.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
Councilman Wolfram, the Public Service Committee did talk about that. Actually, we had this information at our last meeting. I think it's important to recognize that when we talk about our fees, our application fee is $75. So we're talking about $75. The big component of these events is the barricades, the closing of the streets, the labor that's involved in setting up the barricades. That was probably, gosh darn it, probably 90% or is
So it's more than the police or the fire, the police?
So in the cases of like the police being there, that's where Grand Rapids actually charges that, we don't. They're there as part of their service. So there are a number of things that we do that we don't even, that are wrapped up into our $75. And that's, that's all we, get. As far as the labor and the barricade costs, those numbers were determined based on the exact cost of employees. Like if it's overtime, so it's on the weekend, you know what that cost is for an employee per hour. Same thing for after hour, during the week that's associated with that. So we know what those costs are, and they keep track on the work orders down to the hour or minute.
Correct, right to the minute, yes. Yeah, so Grand Rapids too, all their traffic control, they piece rated out, so every barricade costs them $12. So, and I just use the light up parade for instance, so they use 108 pieces of equipment, so just easy math, that's $1,000 just for traffic control rental, not including the labor cost, that work permit cost, and that is just traffic control by itself. So really, we're not apples to apples on what we're asking for out there.
Councilman Beer.
So Jason, before we adjusted the fee schedule, when was the last time we did that?
So it was the year prior and it was $10 before that. So we went from $10 in 2021 to $20 in 2022 and then we're brought up this last year.
And how far back did the $10 go?
So I've been here going on 18 years, so at least 18 years.
18 years prior to that?
Correct.
Okay. And then if we had the public service drop those barricades off for the light up parade, and then had volunteers set them up and then take them down at the end, on that part of the labor, what would it be reduced from? Because I think you had calculated it's gonna be like 1,500.
Correct, it was $14.98, yes,
Okay.
labor, and then $5.15 permit cost.
Okay.
I mean, really, as long as the traffic control comes back with almost all the signs there we need, it's just a matter of our guys putting it out back to be pickups. We're talking $150, probably $50 in there.
Now you're assuming they pick them up from the DPS?
Correct.
Picking them up from the
Correct.
DPS, okay.
I like to use Pub and Grub, for example, Kevin. He's came over multiple times. He bought an enclosed trailer, it might be a good resource as well. He's gonna start taking his traffic control in and out himself.
Councilman Palladino.
Council would willingly pay for this, I think, is one thing we should state. We would all, $10,000 for all the events in the city does not seem like a lot of money, and I think we're all in agreement that this is what general taxation should pay for, basic events like this. The problem is the state legislature only allows us to pay for 4 events a year. So there was also a question about whether the city would have to host them. From what I understand, the city couldn't really host them unless it was a different event that promoted the city but wasn't a Christmas event, for example. It would have to be somehow related to the promotion of the city. If I could clarify why we didn't follow the Grand Rapids option, but maybe it would be worth it. We should talk to the event hosts. So they would get a 50% reduction on the fee schedule, but they would have to do something in exchange for that, put our logos on stuff, provide us services, and we felt that, okay, the labor is 90% of the cost, we're gonna give them $100 off, but they have to do all this extra work. So we didn't think that savings would be worth the work. Where we do think the savings will be is in partnering with people like Kevin, and we know this is it's a big task to take up and set down the barricades. A few hours with 4 guys, I think you said.
Correct.
And so we need to just partner with other organizations and sort of tackle this on a volunteer basis, because it does seem that the state is tying their hands. And we're gonna reach out to different organizations at the college, elsewhere, see if we can get labor, and if we can even I think 2 places had barricades. Spartan Barricade was making a deal with the farmers market, and the college also has its own barricades, so we're gonna make calls and see, would you just donate the barricades for free for this event? We'll have volunteers to set up and take them down, and then hopefully we could get the labor cost ideally down to 0 with those partnerships, and then we're back down to the $400 to $500 range for events, which is what they're able to pay and where we want it to be. So I hope that helps clarify our approach.
Councilman Salah.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for public knowledge, I reached out to Rotary last Wednesday at the Rotary meeting, and I said, hey, we've got this fee schedule. We inadvertently opened up a knowledge stream that the city was previously unaware of, and legally our hands are tied. But the Rotary Club is very excited about helping out. It's just going to take legwork. I'm doing the same at Exchange Club meeting tomorrow at noon, just to see if we can get an army of volunteers. There's plenty of people with trucks and trailers that we could, you know, get these barriers put up and taken down. And then it would just, I think, we could make it as a thing where the community is excited to get together to accomplish these things, and then save your institutions those crazy fees for, because like Councilman Palladino said, we discussed, can we just make it a line item in the budget, you know, $10,000 for labor for events, and unfortunately, the way that the statute is read, that's not something the city's legally allowed to do. And so all these cities that are doing these things, apparently to us, that are, you know, like Quincy and all those cities that you talked about, Ken, when you came and addressed us, I don't know, and then will the state enforce it, right? So probably, who knows?
Probably not.
Probably not, but,
The parade police are gonna come down here and
Right.
tell us we can't have a parade.
and so, you know, I mean, and,
We're belly aching over, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Continue.
well, I appreciate that, Mayor. It's frustrating for us. And so I wanted to postulate making us a sanctuary city for parades. Seriously, I mean that sincerely. And I mean, yeah, of course, it has its intended effect, but like to make us a sanctuary city for labor fees for parades within the city of Hillsdale.
I don't understand why we don't just keep doing what we've been doing for the past 50 years. Why? This is why government sucks, guys. How did we get away with it for, when was the statute passed at the state?
It's not a statute, it's the state constitution.
Okay, so 1963?
Yes.
Okay, so, boy, that was 60 years ago, guys.
And the state wouldn't come most likely looking for you, it would be somebody who.
Somebody would have to file a lawsuit against us, and then we'd have to defend it against it. That's what we have lawyers for, guys.
So I have a question, so it's, the event fee is $400 to $500, is that what the event fee is then?
Application, street closure permit.
So it
So-
comes to $500.
De-
And then
depending-
you have the barricade issue on top of that.
Correct.
Any more discussion, questions for Jason? I say we tell the state to kiss off, honestly. I'm looking around this table and I know there's things that we would tell the state to kiss off about. I have before. So we've got our community organizations in here telling us that this is cost prohibitive and they're not going to be able to do it anymore. And we're jumping through hoops trying to figure out why we need to do something different than we've been doing the past 60 years. This is just why government sucks. Red tape and overcomplicating things.
So is the alternative that we amend the fee schedule, would that be the alternative? Right, I mean, if you said we don't wanna stick with what we've got, as the mayor was talking about, if we wanted to do it, could we just reduce the fee schedule? I mean, not maybe back down to what it was, or do you have, is that the mechanism that you would do if you didn't want it to be $400, if you wanted it to be $200? So you'd need a city council motion to alter the fee schedules, that how it would work?
Correct, I would say yes.
Well, the fact of the matter is before this, we weren't charging for the labor and materials that we should have, so it was basically ignored for whatever reason. This is a long time ago. But, you know, as the discussions come up and these things become public, then if you've got something that you're not doing properly, you should try to correct it.
If I may, real quick too, so the fee schedule we have here isn't just for special events, we also use this guide for contractors, so, the contractor needs to shut down a street for a sewer main, they're paying the same cost as what the special events are. I would say probably need to be unison on what we do for each one. You know, if we're giving off that, or for special events, you know, Johnny Du Bois should be getting for the same for his street closure.
This is just what I was saying on the last agenda item. Jason, you're doing a great job. You are. I feel sorry that you're in the hot. I hope you don't feel like you're in the hot seat right now, because I do think you're doing a wonderful job, and you have for basically since you've been out of high school. You've worked under Roger, and I'm really happy to see you in this position. You deserve it. So I hope you don't feel like I'm busting your chops too much
No.
over this.
Not at all. I know when I went to school for this years ago, it kind of is what stemmed this up as we started to learn more and more. Jake started getting into this the last year or so he was there. That's why it came up kind of now, because we finally got all of our information we had. You know, me and Jake, we worked under the $10 rule for a long time and didn't know anything different until it got brought up when we were starting going to school and stuff and saying this stuff. So that's how it came about.
No, I know. Through education
Absolutely.
and continuing education, and you've done a great job. But my suggestion would be to revert to doing what we were doing before. Somehow we got by. That's my suggestion. Councilman Soha.
Can we move to revert back to what we were doing before for special events that are community-minded, such as parades, what was happening tonight, the foodie walks, etc.
We can do whatever we want to do. Nobody's going to stop us. Tom might say, you guys shouldn't do that, but
Well, I will tell you that you shouldn't do something that you know is a violation of the Michigan Constitution. However, if you were going to adopt a resolution, you would want to make sure that you specify to some degree what you mean by that, right? How you're making the distinction, if you want to sort of bifurcate it. So you would want to have some thought about that and then bring something before the council that was specific enough that, you know, you'd be able to, for the people that have to implement it, so they could tell, okay, this is somebody who gets the reduced and this is somebody who doesn't.
Councilman Soha.
Thank you. Could we give discounts? Is the city allowed to give discounts if it's specified in that way? So, hey, we're charging you, here's the labor fees, but for these specific events, you get 100% discount. Or whatever, I mean.
Again, you can do largely what you want. It would be subject, if anyone challenged it in court, to a review to determine whether or not it was an abuse of your discretion. I would try and do, if you were inclined to do that, something that made it clear that it fits sort of within that definition that we talked about before, which is something that promotes community, it's a community type event that promotes how great it is to be in Hillsdale, right? And you can use that pretty loosely, I would say, and probably it would pass muster from court, right? As long as it's something that all the members of the public are free to enjoy, that they don't have to pay for. There's no organization that's making money from it. You may have an issue if there are sponsors of it, right? Because they're getting advertising through it, but I mean, that would be something you'd have to always think about a little bit. But if I were going to do that, I wanted to at least do my best to try and comply while at the same time doing that. I would try and keep it limited to those types of events.
Of course, maybe events that already have a tradition in this community, like the Light Up Parade, which is not a Christmas parade, Josh. So it's a light up.
Yeah, because that's a whole different kettle of fish. There's a reason, as Josh pointed out, that there's a limit to the holidays that they have in the one statute that you can fund the parades for, like 4th of July, Memorial Day, Armistice Day. They are not religious. They don't have the other constitutional taints that you might have under the U.S. Constitution that you're spending money for. And that's a quagmire you might want to avoid.
It's not held on Christmas, first of all.
Right.
And it's a light up parade. There's lights. You know, it gets dark early in wintertime. So, any more discussion Councilman Wolfram.
So, would you draft the language if they wanted to do it, or how, who would be drafting the language to say what a special, a community event is?
The committee should probably, you have a committee that's been looking at this. If your direction was for them to come up with something, I'm sure they would enjoy doing that, but it should be something that comes from the council, either from the council as a whole or from the committee. And if you wanted me to review it to make suggestions or recommendations, Mr. Lovenger and I would be happy to do that.
I think Councilman Soha and I are gonna get together and we'll work on it, and then we'll submit it to Public Services and to you, because I think Public Services is exhausted with the subject. Is that right? No?
No, I'm fine. I want to find a solution to this. It just seems like we find a solution and then we sort of pull back and say we're going to get sued. But it does seem like the idea of splitting the fee schedule is actually more dangerous legally than just sort of burying the costs and not saying anything about it.
Why you have to have criteria, right, for why you're trying, my suggestion was to try and shoehorn it into one of those statutes that allows you to do it. And the one I referenced that I think, at least for the fee part that Grand Rapids gives a discount on, I think that's how they're doing it, right, is that they're arguing that it would fall within that statute. So, because you'd have to be real careful about if you're doing it for private, profit-making entities, like Du Bois Construction or, all these contractors that are gonna do things. I think you're really running afoul of what that law is designed for. It's designed, the reason that the Constitution has those provisions is that people determine they don't want you giving away their tax money to for-profit entities, and that's an easy way to do it, right? And it's something that leads to corruption, it leads to all sorts of things that are bad. So if I were gonna do it, I'd look at making those distinctions, and I think you stand more of a chance to be able to sustain it if you can reasonably articulate why these people get a discount and these folks don't.
I think what we look at is things that are already rooted in the tradition of this city, so events that we have had in the past. I think that's how we do it.
Fair enough.
The light up parade, summer in the city, 4th of July parade, the things that we have been doing in perpetuity. I think that's how we do it. So,
That sounds good.
That sounds
I'd like
fair.
could we find an example of a city that has extended this to labor costs? Because once again, we're only talking about this distinction applying to the fees. So if we could find some examples of cities saying, no, this should cover labor costs too, I think that could help us.
I can look to see if I can find some examples, and maybe Jason can as well. From my perspective, the way I read the statute, the statute's authorizing you, well, first of all, it says you can levy a tax, right, for up to $50,000, that kind of thing. But if it says you can fund it with a tax, I'd say that you probably can fund it if you can afford to do it without assessing the separate tax, right? So, since you have the ability, if you could shoehorn it within that statutory language, I think the fees would be part of that too, right? If you can pay for a 4th of July parade, or not the fees, but the labor charges, right? That's all the cost. In effect, what it is you're expending the city's funds by paying these people to set up the barricades and such for this event. If you are free to expend the city's funds for events of that type by statute, I think it could cover labor charges and any other costs you have. So if you could shoehorn it in, and we have a reasonable argument that it would fit under that statute, I think you could probably do it.
Councilman Soha.
And could we make that ex post facto so that previously paid would be included as well?
No.
It seems to me that we might be able to do a little bit of both, right? That if we could get the fee down and Rotary goes out and puts the barricades up, it could make it very reasonable for our local community events to happen.
feel like, public services has direction, and can we move on, or do you guys wanna keep talking about this?
I would like to consider making a motion to revert back for these established parades that were just named and, to the previous, until public services finds an amenable solution.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.